statute of the Indiana Code dedicated to landlord-tenant relations. And it's Indiana Code 3231. It's very easy to find. Most of it is really easy to read, but it has sections in there that deal with the security deposit, the return of the security deposit, the landlord's responsibilities, the tenant's responsibilities. And these will really help you tremendously in determining, what you can do. If you don't have, for instance, if you don't have a written lease, and I deal with this pretty regularly, you are required, in order to have somebody or leave your property, you have to give them 30 days notice. That's just the way it is. You have to say to them, you have 30 days. You can't say, oh, you got to be out by Friday. And reading the Indiana Code is something that you can do. And one of those issues that is in the code has to do with issues of habitability. You can't turn off the utilities. You cannot stop the water. You can't, remove the doors. You can't, self-help is never a good thing.
You cannot self-evict.
You cannot self-evict, and that is just not something that I would ever recommend. But reading the landlord-tenant statutes, most of it is very readable, unlike many legal documents. Most of that title is very easy to read and pretty clear-cut. And it's easy to get clarification for those sections that are a little more legalese.
Yeah, I think that's a good starting point. And I know, I have 3 siblings that are attorneys. My brother and his wife, 2 of my brother-in-laws, and so I come from a family of attorneys. And
I bet Thanksgiving's fun.
It is. My poor wife, who's the most non-combative person in the world, just hides under the table in the fetal position. And I know from listening to them talk about clients who, they always say the 2 worst thing a client does is they start doing their own legal work to start.
Yes.
Or they lie to them. They lie. People
yes.
lie to their attorney thinking that their attorney's not going to figure out at some point.
Yeah, and there's nothing an attorney likes worse than being blindsided in court when your client has told you one thing.
Yeah.
And then you have an attorney on the other side who brings out a document that proves that your client just lied through his teeth, not only to the court but to you, and now you have to do a lot of tap dancing. And for me personally, that is grounds to fire a client. I will not represent someone who's going to lie to me. It's always tell me the truth, the good, the bad, and the ugly, so I'm prepared.
Yep.
But yeah, self-help is not good. And people who try to be their own attorneys, those are always fun to represent.
Yeah. Doug, you were going to weigh in?
Oh, I was just going to say, one thing that I do like about Indiana and Indianapolis is that, wouldn't you agree, Catherine, that in general, the landlord laws are pretty, I don't know if I'd call them landlord, friendly, but it's pretty easy to understand. They're pretty simple. You don't have problems evicting tenants when you have a lease, when you do things correctly. As long as you set it up correctly, you're not going to have problems. Correct.
In Indiana, unlike, I know California is set up this way, in Chicago and New York, if a landlord has failed to correct a problem, let's say you have a toilet that's not working, the tenant can pay the rent to the court, and the court holds it in escrow. We don't have that in Indiana.
Right.
And you can argue the merits of whether that's fair or not, but the fact is right now the law is you cannot refuse to pay rent because a landlord has not done his job. Now there are other remedies available to you, but not paying rent is not a remedy. And
no, that's a great point, because I've been to eviction court with my attorneys, and I love that, because a tenant will try to get up and manipulate and say, well, they don't come out and fix anything, and I call them, and then the judge will look at them and say, did you pay your rent this month? No?
Yep.
Then you're getting evicted in 2 weeks. And
yes.
it's so nice to know. I love that. I found Indy's incredibly landlord friendly when it comes to that.
And from that standpoint, it is landlord friendly. But at the same time, that doesn't mean that landlords don't have a responsibility. And and just because you can get somebody evicted from a property pretty easily doesn't mean that at the damages hearing, because it is a 2-part process. You have the eviction, and then later, after the person is out of property, you have the damages hearing where there will be a determination of how much money is owed. And damages is an all-inclusive word that includes rent and late fees, as well as actual property damages. But at the damages hearing, that tenant can then come back to you and say, for instance, I saw a landlord who claimed that the tenant had broken all 10 windows in a property. Well, that was not the case.
Right.
And that tenant was able to come back and say, actually, these are pictures of what the house looked like when we moved in, which made that landlord look not very good in front of the judge. So even just because you can get somebody out of a property quickly doesn't mean that you shouldn't still pay attention to habitability issues and trying to be a good landlord. I mean, it's just, some people are just interested in being slumlords, and that's what they're going to do,
Right.
and that's not. But it's really, you're going to be more profitable, and you're going to, in the long run, I think, have a better business if you just pay attention at what your obligations are, even in a climate that is as landlord friendly as many people feel Indianapolis and Indiana are.
Yeah, those are great points. Gary, what?
Yeah, just to kind of build upon, I mean, we've been talking about just being a landlord, or if you have a strategy in real estate of buy and hold properties. Many people choose not to be landlords. Now, they'll own the properties, but they will want to then hire that out to a property management company.
Correct.
And, and I think one common problem that a lot of beginning investors make is, I'm going to do buy and hold properties, and I'm just going to let a property management company handle it. Well, the problem is you have to learn how to manage your property manager. Now, the property management company will take care of a lot of the day-to-day stuff like what we've been talking about here, but you still have an obligation because that is your property, it is your business, and so just don't assume that the property management company knows what your objectives are. Don't assume that they understand what it is your objective is and what you're doing with that property. So you still have an obligation as a real estate business owner to property manage your property manager.
I think that's a great point, because there are so many property owners, and a lot of my clients are also property management companies, and they'll say, well, I need to talk to my property owner. And I think if you are a property owner, and you especially with your out-of-state property owners, and Indiana has a lot of them, it's really important to establish general practices in terms of how you want your property to be managed. I have clients who they would rather have somebody in there that's paying half of the rent late every month, because they're getting something, than having nobody in there, especially if it's in a depressed area or the house is going to need a lot of work to get it up to code, and they've already got somebody in there. So I think that is really important, and it's important for non-managing property owners to know what their property managers are doing. They need to know what a 45-day letter is. They need to know what the rules are that their property manager should be doing, so that they don't then have to get the phone call going, oh, well, we weren't able to get the security deposit back because blah, blah, blah. And self-education is key, whether you are an actively managing landlord or you're sending it out to a third party.
True. Yeah.
And Gary started it, and Catherine hit it right on the head too. One of the things that Aaron and I always talk about is it bothers us a little bit how complacent and how, frankly, lazy the majority of American investors have become. And we talk about pensions and 401ks and the lack of knowledge and education on that. And that's why you have to, when you're getting into real estate, and property management companies are great. Aaron and I both we do management in-house with our own management companies, and they can be great if they're doing what they're supposed to be doing, but you need to be active as an investor in dealing with them. And in order to successfully do that, you need to get education and understand what you're doing. Groups like Saria is a good place to start.
Yeah, absolutely it is. And just to summarize, if an investor is listening to this, Catherine, and they think, man, I want to work with her, I want her to represent me, what's the best way for them to get a hold of you?
They can contact me through Syria, or they can just call my office, and that number is 317-508-7163, and it's Ransburg Law, and I'm a very small practice. I really have kind of a niche practice where I don't represent apartment complexes. I represent primarily people that own 5, 10, 15, 20, 50 homes, individual property owners. There are a lot of attorneys who are getting away from that because that tends to be a lot more labor intensive for me. for the attorney. But that is kind of a niche that I've fallen into, and they can certainly contact me.
Okay, and then you're also at the monthly Cyria meetings?
I am.
Okay, and just to give you guys the website again, for those of you who are interested, it's www.cireia.org. And you know what? The time has flown with the two of you in studio. I wonder if I can convince you to come back next week on the 22nd to be on the program again.
Sure.
We'd be happy to, yes.
Good, because next week Doug and I are going to be talking about 401ks versus real estate, retirement plans, why real estate is such a better investment than the traditional 401k or IRA, and we'd love for you guys to sit in and be a part of that. Is that something that you could do?
We would love to do
Be
it.
happy to.
Fantastic. Well, we appreciate having all three guests in studio with us today. This next weekend, September 22nd, 23rd, Doug and I will be doing a 2-day training. It is $250 for local investors that would like to attend. And over those 2 days, we will be educating you on all things real estate. Together, Doug and I have done over 3,000 properties. We've been involved with everything from trailer parks to apartment complexes to new construction, deals on wheels, right?
Yeah, makes me laugh every time.
Yeah, you name it, we've been a part of it. And so what we try to do, which is in harmony with Cyria's mission, is to use that event, and we don't make money from it. I can tell you that this next one we're actually running at a slight loss to put the event on. When you look at booking the JW Marriott and tour buses and staffing and coffee breaks, then it isn't a profitable event, but it's fantastic for networking. And at every one of those events, we meet investors who we're able to build relationships and work with and partner up with on deals. If you'd like to be part of that, you can get information for that event at invest317.com. You can call us at 866-612-0346. We appreciate you spending time with us today. We will be back next Saturday at 11 a.m. here on News Talk 1430 WXNT.